God bless you today. We're going to be right back. Cannot wait to get into this message today. Call your friends, call your family. Tell them Community Fellowship Church Online is broadcasted live right now. We'll be right back.
Friends, this is going to be good. Welcome to our church.
Genesis chapter 9, verse number 12, and we'll read down through, we'll stop at verse number 17. Genesis 9, 12 through 17. Those of you that are scribing for me, if you would put that in the thread, I would greatly appreciate it. And here it is. And God said, this is the sign of the covenant which I make between me and you, and every living creature that is with you, for perpetual generations. I set my rainbow in the cloud, and it shall be for the sign of the covenant between me and the earth. It shall be when I bring a cloud over the earth that the rainbow shall be seen in the cloud. And I will remember my covenant, which is between me and you and every living creature of all flesh. The waters shall never again become a flood to destroy all flesh. The rainbow shall be in the cloud, and I will look on it to remember the everlasting covenant between God and every living creature of all flesh that is on the earth. And God said to Noah, this is the sign of the covenant which I have established between me and all flesh that is on the earth. Now, let me go back and just read a couple of verses here for emphatic purposes, and then we'll tag this text with the topic. Verse number 12 says, and God said, this is the sign of the covenant which I make between me and you and every living creature that is with you for perpetual generations. I set my rainbow in the cloud, and it shall be for the sign of the covenant between me and the earth. All right, let me tag this text with the topic here. And many of you already know what I'm preaching today, but let me share it with you all. I can hear God saying, let me get my rainbow back. Yeah, let me get my rainbow back. And we certainly are thanking God for living in a country that allows the freedom, well, supposedly allows the freedom of speech, the freedom of religious practices, um, life, love, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. We are thanking God for the country in which we live in that allows us the opportunity to come together in various forms and to share in various ways. We thank God for the country that gives us constitutional rights and civil rights that protects us in everything in which we desire to do that is within the confines of legal construct. We thank God for that. And I thank God because with as many problems as America has, and America has a whole lot of problems, I can tell you after having traveled around the world and throughout this world on several occasions, this is still the best country to live in. The one thing about it is that we say that we are Christocentric as a country. We are a God-based country and everything like that. And I understand. I mean, I understand what we say. I understand why we say it and all that type stuff. But then there are some things that I think that the open dialogue should bring about that we should at least begin to contemplate, especially in the community of faith. Now, again, when it comes to political positions and things of that nature, I have absolutely little to nothing to say about anything. But just a conversation, I think, is very important. And I was thinking about God, and of course, this month being noted as Pride Month, and we thank God again. We thank God for the civil liberties of everybody. Thank God for the civil liberties of everybody, and that you can live how you want to live, and you can do however you want to do, and you can love who you love, and all of that stuff. Thank God for that capacity in a country to be able to do that. But in the community of faith, there is tension in the text that we have to at least address. Would you agree with me? Would you agree with me that it's not about looking at people with eyes of judgment? Because really the truth is no one can judge anyone. The truth is only God can judge us all. So it's not about choosing a position and suggesting that my position is greater than yours, or yours is lesser than mine, or mine is superior to yours and yours is inferior to mine. But it's about having a conversation in the community of faith to suggest that we at least, I don't know, say, y'all, there's an elephant in the room. I have great friends and family of all walks of life. Some of you have seen my posts. We have great members and those who attend our church that are from all walks of life. And we thank God for each and every one of them, because guess what our job is? Our job is to love. I wish I had somebody. Not love with condition, but love unconditionally. And that's what I do. I love all of our people. I love all of our members. I love everybody connected. And I'm telling you right now, if there's anything that I can do to help them be any better or get any more, I'm going to be the first one jumping on the train to do it. Interesting here as we are dealing with, and I love to be one of the, let me back up for a moment. It was Dr. D.Z. Gofield. I was in Los Angeles, California at a ministers conference called WHW, and Dr. D.Z. Gofield, he said years ago, he said, listen, he said, the real preachers, he said, the ones that are going to be relevant, the ones that are going to matter in today's time, they're going to have a newspaper in one hand and the Bible in the other. Simply because, and when he said newspaper, obviously, you know, you can have social, you can have your iPad and everything. But the point that he was trying to make was, if you are not a preacher or a pastor that is keeping up with current events and knowing what's happening in society, how are you going to bridge the gap between society and spirituality? What system will you use except knowing what is taking place in real time? And I have friends and family. I have a lot of them. I was looking, and even at my workplace, we were having a sensitivity training, and it dawned on me, and it really blessed me just to know that there's so. I mean, listen, there's so many people who are finally coming to an understanding that hatred gets you nowhere. No, hatred gets you nowhere. Love wins, right? And so when I was looking and thinking about this during the sensitivity training, we were having a sympathetic and empathetic training. We were having this sensitivity training about so many different things. And it was in celebration of Pride Month, because this is what, I mean, hey, in the secular world, I mean, you just do what you do, right? And I said, okay, that's great. I said, you know, I started researching, you know, looking at the Stonewall uprising and Harvey Milk. And I started looking at I want to say Marsha Johnson, and I think it was Sylvia Rivera, and started looking at the history of Pride Month, and I was like, that's really something. And this is the first time that I've ever found myself observing Pride Month. I've been knowing Pride Month's been going on for years. Matter of fact, you know, I've obviously, come on, Joy, you out there on the West Coast, you know, living in the Sacramento Bay Area and the San Francisco Bay Area, man, we know about Pride. We know about the parades and everything, right? And for me, I've never been one that's afraid to approach, how shall I say, uncomfortable conversations. I've never been one afraid to approach conversations that make people feel uneasy. I can see some of you even right now, you're kind of twitching in your chair and scratching your head, said, oh, Lord, what is Pastor about to do? What is he about to say? Lord, what deep end is he about to go off of? I'm not about to go off of any deep end. I just want to have a conversation because what I saw in my research, and those of you who know me, you know I love to research. And in my research, I started looking, and as I was looking at the history of this Pride Month, the flag, as I was looking at the history of the flag, and I was looking at the history in 1978 when the flag was first created. The flag was first created, and I can't call his name right now, but the flag was first created in 1978 upon the commission of Harvey Milk, who was the first openly gay political figure out on the West Coast. And so this flag, as we look at this flag, it was created. Gilbert Baker, that's his name. Gilbert Baker. I was looking for his name. Gilbert Baker. Gilbert Baker, 1978, he was commissioned to get this flag. And it says on the History Channel, it says that he created the rainbow flag in 1978. That's where I paused. Because number one, I'm going to respect everybody's position in whatever they do. They have to respect mine, right? So I paused though for a moment when it said the rainbow flag was created in 1978. And in my pausing, as I saw where it said the rainbow flag was created in 1978, it was like immediately the Lord said, now ain't that funny? The rainbow flag was created in 1978 to represent potentially, or to represent specifically, a wonderful pride and or what shall I say? A wonderful pride and celebration of a lifestyle that man-made. And when I say man-made, hear what I'm saying when I say man-made. Because we have to know the difference between nature and nurture. Watch what I'm saying, so don't take this out here and start trying to blast me. Because, I mean, if you blast me, y'all know I got some big guns, right? But the point I'm trying to make is when I say man-made, the Pride Month, man-made, the celebration of pride, man-made. It's just like Black History Month, man-made, or 4th of July, man-made. All those things are man-made, right? But when I looked at it, it caused me to pause because I said, now, the rainbow flag was created by Gilbert Baker in 1978 under the commission of Harvey Milk. But the rainbow, when I look at Genesis chapter 9, was created by God. The irony of the jealousy of God is interesting here. And I'm going somewhere. I got 3 or 4 points I'm going to share with you right quick. And we'll be out of here in about 28 to 31 minutes. The irony of the jealousy of God, when I look at this, it's interesting that God says that he can be jealous, but we can't be jealous. Ain't that something? He says, I am a jealous God. Matter of fact, in Exodus chapter number 20, verse number 4, he says, you shall not make for yourself a carved image, any likeness of anything that is in heaven above, or that is in the earth below, or that is in the water underneath, because I'm a jealous God. I'm a jealous God. He tells us being jealous is not spiritual, right? Well, I tell people all the time that you have to know the difference between jealousy and envy. Jealousy and envy are two different things because you have to be the original possessor of a person, place, or thing in order to be righteously jealous. I made a posting the other day, and one of my postings, matter of fact, the posting I was talking about was a long posting just talking about all the different characters in my family and friend circle, and one of my homeboys, he decides to snatch my post and just put it up on his website, on his social media site. Now, here's the thing. I have no problem with you sharing anything. I do it all the time. When I see good posts and when I see something that comes up and I think that it's worth reposting, I'm going to put repost, and whoever is the originator, if it is known, I'm going to put the originator's name, right? Because that's what you do. Other than that, that's called plagiarizing. So y'all know me. I called up my good buddy. I said, hey, man, I said, that looks like a good author of that post. You might want to say a shout out to him for writing it since you just snatched it and tried to brand it as your own. Now, did I get jealous of that? Absolutely not, because I'm the originator of it, and I was the first one to put it out there. So therefore, everybody already knew. So it doesn't matter how much, watch me now, he tries to imitate me. He can never duplicate me, right? So with that in mind, when we talk about jealousy and envy, jealousy requires you to be the original possessor of a person, place, or thing. And then if it is somehow taken away or withdrawn from you and is in the possession of something or someone else, you can be jealous about that because you were the originator of the possession. And you can desire it back. Envy is totally different. Envy, I think you all have heard me say this before. Envy is when I ain't never had it, but you got it, and I'm mad you got it, don't want you to have it, whether I have it or not. Y'all ain't saying nothing to me. So here's the thing. Watch this, you all. So God says I'm a jealous God. From before time, Satan, then Lucifer, when we really look at this, he has never settled with the reality of not being as God. Woo! Even from the moment that he thought he would be like God. Woo! Y'all remember when he got evicted out of heaven? He thought within himself that he would be like God. Not as God, because as God would be to have the full and complete complement of attributes of God. He said, I'm just going to be like God. God said, no, ain't there's none like me. So follow me now. Lucifer thinks that he's going to be like God. From that moment that he thought that he would be like God, he was evicted from the eternal heavens. Therefore, what happens is his cunning and his crafty conspiracy to confiscate authority through the influence of man's willingness to try to be like God has been his deceitful strategy since the beginning of time. Woo. So since before time, he thought he would be like God. And since he was evicted out of heaven, and he came down in the form of a serpent, and he appeared in the form of a serpent, back in the Garden of Eden. Then what has happened is his cunning and crafty conspiracy to confiscate authority through the influence of man's willingness to be or try to be like God has been his deceitful strategy since the beginning of time. In case you don't know it, I'm already preaching. Relativity has become the order of the day, and absolution has become the opposition of the day. Relativity, we know that in post-secondary, especially in post-secondary academia, we know that everything is absolute. Everything is relative. Nobody wants anything that's absolute. Why? Because the area of least resistance is always more attractive and magnetic, and it represents anywhere that there is no standard required. Oh, Lord have mercy. Help me right now. The wonderment and power of God's grace. Let me keep going because I'm going to get you out of here. The wonderment and power of God's grace is beyond understanding. How many of you besides me, when we think about the grace of God, when we think about the mercy of God, it is beyond our understanding. And it's beyond our understanding sometimes, so much so that we take that grace for granted and underestimate the penalty of his punishment because we believe that the goodness of God only refers to his benevolence and not his performance. Oh, you got to go back and listen to this because I wanted to bless you. At some point, here's where I am. We're going to have to discuss the reality of nature versus nurture. When we look at the procreative performance and production of nature itself, we're going to have to discuss this in real time. As uncomfortable as it may be, as inconvenient as it may be, as antithetical to societal acceptances as it may be, at some point we have to discuss this, because when we look at everything that God has created, it is designed to procreate, right? And so in the procreation, we see that whatever the union is within creation, God wants it to make more of its kind, right? In recent decades, June has, as I said, has been declared Pride Month. And since coming into the knowledge of this, I've been suspended in perpetual intrigue as I watch with glee. I watch the coming out of the closet for so many who ecstatically declare what I call gender pendants. Gender pendants, gender independence. And listen, if y'all don't know anything about this, you might want to read up on some stuff. I mean, I have friends and family. I have friends who are in same-sex marriages. I have family. I have loved ones. We have people that are connected to our ministry. And listen, we love everybody. Huh? Oh, y'all don't like that part. I do. Here's the thing. It doesn't stop me from having the conversations that I know I have to have when it comes to the Word of God. As I contemplated the cunning engineering of the serpent from the beginning that you heard me refer to earlier, to suggest that things are not necessarily as God said. Remember, I told you that he has a conspiracy to confiscate the influence for the people or over the people, to cause them to think that his authority is greater than God's. He engineers from the very beginning to suggest that things are not necessarily as God said. I wish I had time. I do have time. I'm going to take time. Genesis chapter 2, verse number 17. Don't you remember when God is speaking to Adam? He says, Adam, now I paraphrase, boy, in the day that you eat thereof of that tree, you shall surely die. Genesis 2:17. This is nothing new that the devil has been doing. This is nothing new that Satan has begun. This is nothing new that the serpent has been executing and operating. He's been doing this since the beginning of man. He has been suggesting that things are not necessarily as God said and as God intended. He tells Adam, he says, in the day you eat thereof, you shall surely die. Genesis 2:17. And then we look at Genesis 3 and 4. I'm just going to read it. Genesis 3 and 4, listen to what he says. Then the serpent said to the woman, it's in the text, y'all, just read it. You will not surely die. Wait a minute. God just said in 2:17, you shall surely die. Now you telling me that I will not surely die. But wait a minute. Who is the giver of life and who is the restorer from death? Now, this concerns me because when I look at what is happening here, this cunning engineering of the serpent to suggest that things are not necessarily as God said, it concerns me to see the idea of thinking yourself to be what you desire and assigning that thought to a creator glitch. It has become so eagerly and readily accepted. I'm preaching better than you said, amen. You don't have to shout if you don't want to. It was not a creator glitch. There was no such thing as a creator glitch. Let's be clear. God is God and is absolutely sovereign. And guess what? Saving all he wants to, who recognizes to have received into their hearts the full, finished, and complete work of his son. Let's be clear about that. God saves who he wants to save. So you nor I can determine who God saves. Let's be real clear. So before people begin to put their judgment hats on, let's be reminded that God is God and not us. Woo! But it don't stop me from having a conversation. It's widely known that I've never been one to run from a topic or a conversation. And my desire is not to be right, but to pursue and understand what is right. So today I want to look at about 4 points for consideration in these next few moments throughout these scattered remarks. I want to look at 4 points of consideration as I present today's message to you. Number one, I want to look at the power of illusion. Come on, scribers, the power of illusion. Number two, I want to look at the past of collusion. Then number three, I want to look at the prevention of delusion. And then finally, I want to look at the premise of conclusion. And so when we look at this, we understand here that when we look at the power of illusion, we've got to understand that from the beginning of time, this is what I'm saying here, the master deceiver has been Satan. And oftentimes, listen, I don't blame people for being blind. I don't blame, you can't blame nobody for being blind. If they can't see, they just can't see. And then I don't step myself into some position of superiority because I do see or think that I see better than anybody else. No, I just see what I see. Don't tell me that I don't see what I'm looking at when I'm looking right at what I see, right? So when we talk about the power of illusion, when we talk about the power of, Siegfried and Roy and David Copperfield and David Blaine and the power of illusion, making one thing look one way, knowing that is another way, and the power of influence in the illusion to where if I can make it look like what you want it to look like, then you'll be more attracted to it. And watch this. I can further convince you that what I'm showing you is really what you want to see, not because it's really what it is, but because I've tapped into what you want to see, and I want to give you more of what you want. Let me tell y'all something. I'm a conversational illusionist. Let me tell you how I know. I'm a conversational illusionist, and I'll tell you how I know. Because anytime I don't really want to be bothered in a conversation, I'll always listen for the subjects that I know people like to talk about, and I'll bring those subjects up as though I want to talk about so I can let them talk, and I don't have to listen. I can pay attention to the stuff I want to pay attention to. Woo! Satan is the master deceiver. I threw that in there. Yeah, I threw that in there. But Satan is the master deceiver. So we have to subscribe to the fact that if there's anybody that's going, listen, God doesn't have to create any illusion. The Bible says in Genesis 1:1, and I go back to the fact that he talks about he's a jealous God. In the beginning, God created, period. In the beginning, God created. There was nothing that was created that he did not create. There was nothing that was made that he did not make. So guess what? If he says I'm jealous about anything, I'm jealous about all things because I created all things. Right? So the enemy, Satan, he's the master deceiver. And his job is to put before us illusions. And so we have to be mindful of that. That's discussion point number one. I'll move to discussion point number two. Then we have to consider the past or the history. The past of collusion. Watch this. Satan, listen. Satan knew that he could not get to Adam directly. So because he knew that he could not get to Adam directly, who did he go to? He went to Eve. And because Eve had indirect information from God, she only had direct information from the serpent. And because he was the one that spoke directly to her, watch this, antithetically to what God had said to Adam, and I could get into the details of the dialogue that maybe Adam did or did not have or should or should not have had with Eve. But if Adam was her covering and she has the dialogue directly with the serpent, then now what begins to happen is there is a false empowerment. Oh, there's an elusive empowerment that Eve now has when she's having this direct conversation with the serpent, and she begins to collude with the serpent. She begins to collude with him, and she says, now, I mean, it does look like it's good for Eve. I mean, I guess it couldn't be that bad. So now they begin to execute collusion. Here's the point I'm trying to make. Down through the years, there's so many different examples in which I could give you in the Bible on how man has colluded with the enemy in order to somehow think himself advancing. Woo! Wish I had time to talk about Judas colluding. Yeah, see, we have a history of collusion. It's no wonder that man colludes with the enemy. Because, matter of fact, here's one of the quotes, and I don't have it down packed, but I think some of you have heard this before. It's amazing on how two enemies will become allies when they feel they have a common enemy. Yeah, so we have the power of illusion. Master deceiver. We know this dude is such a deceiver to where Eve and Adam were both in the Garden of Eden and they had perpetual access to the tree of life. This cat was so deceptive that he was able to influence them. He didn't make them. He was able to influence them to separate their fellowship with God by doing, watch this, the exact opposite of what God said do. Woo. How did he separate man from God? Well, man had to collude, had to work alongside, had to work with him to separate himself from God. Point number 3, let me keep moving. We've got to discuss the prevention of delusion. You've got to know how to view through the lenses of God's vision, not man's vision. We can find ourselves becoming delusional because we start looking at all these social media and all the, if you're not careful and if you start looking at the world too long and too strong and too much, you'll stop being able to see that really you are supposed to be the head and not the tail. You're supposed to be the lender and not the borrower. You're supposed to be above and not beneath. You're supposed to bring forth, watch this, be fruitful and multiply. You'll stop seeing that because here's the thing, the power of nature versus nurture. Nurture has become more voluminous. Nurture has become more aggressive. Nurture has become more of the mainstream consensual thought process to where it has overtaken nature in the sense of conversation, but not in the sense of reality. Woo. I can hear the Lord, somebody saying, what is he talking about? Let me get my rainbow back. Y'all hang on with me. I'm telling you, I'm going somewhere. Then we have to look at point number 4, the premise of conclusion. And the premise of conclusion is that we must see here that God's covenant with us. When we look at this text here in Genesis chapter number 9, verse number 12, it says, and God said, this is the sign of the covenant which I make between me and you, and every living creature that is with you for perpetual generations. He says, I set my rainbow. It's right there in verse 13. Genesis chapter 9, verse 13. I set my rainbow. I set it in the cloud, and it shall be for the sign of the covenant between me and earth. Now, I'm going to go back and remind each and every one of you that the enemy's desire, his job, his whole MO, because he knows that he can never be as God or even like God, is to do his very best to be, watch this, y'all, the most pristine counterfeit you've ever seen. He's the best, let me tell you something. He's the best cubic zirconia any diamond gemologist would ever see. He's the best counterfeit there is. He's the one. Listen, I'm going to tell you right now, there are many of us that can testify to the fact that, notice, before God gets to us the very thing that he wants us to have, the devil can send a wonderful counterfeit just before. Woo! Whether that be a person, place, or thing. God knows how to send you the best, and the devil knows how to send you what looks best. And so when we look at this here, we understand that as we look at this whole premise of conclusion, as we look at what God is saying about my rainbow, this is my covenant, this is what I created, this is what I started, this is what I did. We know it follows the flood, and he says it's going to remind me each and every time when you see the rainbow, I'm looking at it too. Woo! I'm putting a covenant on myself between me and you that I will never flood this earth again. I'm putting a covenant on myself that I will protect you from the flood waters. Huh. And look, when you look at the rainbow, you know that I'm looking at the rainbow because I made the rainbow. And so I can hear God saying, as we are in this month that is celebratory of Pride Month, when you see those rainbow flags, I need you to help people understand you need to give the Lord his rainbow back, because that's not what the Lord is representing in this text. When he originated this rainbow, the rainbow indicated his covenant between us, that he would not destroy us by water. This rainbow does not represent what you want, what you desire, and what you think. And because we're in America, thank God for political freedom. Thank God for civil freedom. But in the community of faith, there still has to be a standard that is at least discussed. God says, let me run me my rainbow. Because y'all done took this thing, and you done took this thing, and you done made this thing out to be something other than what I intended. And I don't even hear God being mad about it. I hear God being merciful about it. I hear God saying, I think you need to go back and look at your life through the lenses of my view. Coming out, living your truth, and so many other mantras have been so joyfully embraced and celebrated. And I'm so intrigued when I see it. And I wonder what would happen if the saints of God adopted this same vigor and vitality to come out. Yeah, you know, I hear people talk about I'm coming out. And listen, again, politically, I have nothing to say about that. Matter of fact, personally, I ain't got nothing to say about that. But there is something that wells up within me as a child of God, to where I see so many people come out with such pride, and I applaud them because I appreciate the method. I appreciate that you have the gall and audacity to stand on what you believe, to stand on how you feel, and to commit yourself to the way in which you desire. But I just wonder what would happen if the saints of God, knowing that God said, my rainbow I set this rainbow in the sky to remind me and to remind you that I have made a covenant with you. It doesn't even matter what you do with it. I've made a covenant myself. What would happen if we came out? It would seem to me that we would be the ones coming out. It would seem to me if there was anybody coming out, we would be the ones coming out. Why? Because he brought us out. And because he brings us out. Is there anybody in this service with me, watching me online right now, who can declare, I'm coming out because he brought me out? He brought me out of darkness into his marvelous light. He brought me out of the muck and the mire of clay that held me tight. He brought me out. He brought me out of the valley of despair. He brought me out of the depths of depression. He brought me out of the grips of bitterness. He brought me out of the pain of disappointment. He brought me out of the hurt of heartbreak. He brought me out of the chaos of confusion and regulated my mind. He brought me out of the bondage of sin. Yes, he deserves his rainbow back. Yes, he does. God deserves his rainbow back. Give it back. I wish I had somebody that would just type, give it back. I feel something pushing me here. Give it back. He brought us out. Yes, he deserves his rainbow back, because it is a symbol of his covenant with us. It is a symbol of his covenant with us, his symbol of his faithfulness, his symbol of his love toward us, his symbol of his goodness toward us. Give him his rainbow back, because it points us to another symbol of his goodness and his mercy. Woo! Give him his rainbow back, because it reminds us that he also made another covenant. When God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him would not perish but have everlasting life. That is a reason to come out. The songwriter said, go tell it on the mountain, over the hills and everywhere. Go tell it on the mountain that Jesus Christ is born. But wait, don't stop there. Don't just tell it on the mountain that he is born, but you ought to go from the mountain and go tell it from the hill. Oh Lord, go tell it from the hill, that not only from the mountain do I tell you he was born, but from the hill I need to tell you he died. Why do I want God to have his rainbow back? Because I don't ever want anything to get in the way of God remembering his covenant with us. Don't just tell it from the mountain that he is born, but tell it from the hill that he died. But don't stop right there. I'm out of here. Don't stop right there. Tell it from the tomb that bright early on Sunday morning, bright early, he didn't just be born. He didn't just die, but early on Sunday morning, he got up with all power in his hands and tell the world that he is risen. What does that mean to you and me? That means if God can bring Jesus out of a grave, he can bring you and me out of anything. Nothing is too hard for God. There is nothing that is impossible for God. Why? Because the world needs to know. I'm done. I'm done. The world needs to know that there's a God who makes no mistakes. The world needs to know that the God we serve doesn't have glitches. The world needs to know that the God we serve changes not. The world needs to know that he loves unconditionally. He forgives unrelentingly. And he saves undeniably. I don't need a flag with many colors. I only need one flag that has one color, that's been dipped in the fountain, filled with blood, that's been drawn from Emmanuel's vein, where sinners plunge beneath that flood and lose all guilt and stain. Can't you hear God saying, I love you so much? Give me my rainbow back.